5 nuns vanished overnight from St. Bernadette's convent in rural Wisconsin. No signs of struggle, no missing vehicles, no witnesses. Just 5 bowls of untouched soup, a locked chapel, and silence. The case remains unsolved. 2 decades later, a burned wooden box is recovered from the old chapel's foundation. Inside, 5 rosaries, a list of names, and a handwritten message that reopens a mystery the church had long buried. St. Bernadette's convent stood hidden among the trees, 15 miles off the highway, just outside the quiet farming town of Durbin. For nearly 8 decades, it had served as a place of retreat and quiet service. The sisters there weren't cloistered, but they lived simple, structured lives. Prayer, study, community outreach, and music. On October 14, 1996, everything changed. 5 of the convent's longest-serving residents, Sister Anna, Sister Margaret, Sister Catherine, Sister Noelle, and Sister Bernice, attended evening prayers as they always did. They were last seen around 6:30 p.m., finishing choir practice in the chapel. By morning, they were gone. The following day, Joyce Malone, a local volunteer who handled accounting for the parish, arrived around 9 a.m. She knocked. No answer. The front door was locked. She circled around the side, still locked. But from the open kitchen window, she could smell soup on the stove. That was unusual. Inside, everything was undisturbed. The beds were made. The hymn books were neatly stacked on the pews. Dinner, 5 bowls of lentil soup, covered with napkins, sat untouched on the long kitchen table. The choir's sheet music was still on the stand. The chapel bell had not rung, and there were no signs of anyone inside. No forced entry, no broken glass, no missing belongings. The only anomaly? A narrow east-facing window in the chapel was cracked open about 4 inches. It overlooked the forest. There were no footprints in the dirt below. The sheriff's office was called. A full search of the building and surrounding woods was launched. Nothing was found. Sheriff Charles Rayner led the inquiry. Records from the time show that the case was taken seriously. Bloodhounds were brought in. Helicopters scanned the forest canopy. Every trail, ravine, and access road was searched. There was no trace of the women. No evidence of a vehicle leaving the property. No tire tracks on the gravel path. All of the convent's keys remained inside. Even the main gate was padlocked from the inside. Local theory ranged from a mass runaway to abduction, but nothing supported either. Then came a complication. 2 weeks into the search, the Archdiocese issued a public statement. The sisters had chosen to step away for personal reflection and rededication, and had been placed in a secure and confidential location. No such transfer was ever documented. When families pushed for clarification, they were met with silence. Eventually, the case was marked inactive. Rumors of cover-ups, secret orders, or even internal exile spread through Durbin, but no one had answers. The convent was quietly shut down in 1998, its furniture left behind, the chapel's wooden cross removed. There was only one person who might have seen what happened that night: Sister Elsie. At just 22, she was the youngest member of the convent. She had not attended choir practice that evening. Records show she had been recovering from a mild fever and resting in a separate wing. According to early statements, she woke sometime after midnight, disoriented, and heard faint music coming from the chapel, unusual for that hour. When she approached, the music stopped. The door was shut. The hall was dark. By morning, the others were gone. Within 2 days, Sister Elsie went completely mute. Doctors diagnosed her with functional mutism, likely brought on by emotional trauma. She was transferred to a private care facility and never spoke again. For over 2 decades, she offered no clues, no answers, until 2016. During routine renovations to the long-abandoned St. Bernadette's Chapel, a carpenter clearing a crawlspace beneath the altar found a scorched wooden box wedged between two support beams. Inside were 5 identical rosaries, a single sheet of aged paper, and a folded slip listing 5 names: Anna, Margaret, Noelle, Catherine, Bernice. The note read, "Where there are no voices, there are no witnesses." The box had nearly been discarded until it was shown to local historian Tom Anders, who recognized the names immediately. He turned it over to authorities. The sheriff's department, now under Janine Holloway, quietly reopened the file. As the investigation resumed, Sheriff Holloway tracked down Sister Elsie, who was still living in care outside Madison. She hadn't spoken in 20 years, but had taken up sketching as therapy. When shown a photo of the box, she reacted immediately, flipping through her sketch pad until she landed on a familiar image. It was the chapel, seen from the choir loft. 5 hooded figures stood in a semicircle near the altar. In the corner of the drawing, she had repeatedly written a Latin phrase, "Finis in silentio," the end in silence. It matched an old crime scene photo from 1996, where the same phrase had been scratched faintly into a side panel in the chapel's east wall, missed during the original investigation. And just below that panel, a hidden latch was discovered. Inside, another box. Inside a narrow compartment, hidden behind the chapel's east wall, authorities recovered a second box. This one was intact, dust-covered, and tightly sealed. Unlike the burned remains found earlier, this container had been deliberately hidden, tucked behind an uneven panel behind the altar. Inside were 5 identical brass medallions. Each was engraved with a single name: Sister Anna, Sister Margaret, Sister Noelle, Sister Catherine, Sister Bernice. Beneath the medallions sat a folded parchment, carefully preserved and wrapped in wax cloth. It wasn't signed, but the message was clear. In silence they wait, in silence they remain. The vow was made, and the gate was closed. Do not seek what was freely given. The note raised more questions than it answered. Who had written it? What vow had been made? And more importantly, what had they chosen to leave behind? Sheriff Janine Holloway requested access to structural blueprints of the original chapel. Comparing them with current schematics revealed subtle inconsistencies: missing crawl spaces, misaligned doors, and one anomaly: a now sealed access point above the choir loft. A construction team was brought in. Above the chapel rafters, behind the old bell tower cavity, investigators discovered a forgotten crawl space. Inside, they found remnants of melted candles, torn fabric, and 5 small prayer cards. Each bore the name of one of the missing nuns. On the back of each card, a single word. All 5 said the same thing: still. DNA analysis yielded no usable results. Too degraded. But these weren't the actions of someone trying to flee. They were deliberate, hidden for a reason. As new findings emerged, attention returned to one name not often mentioned in official records: Father Thomas Delaney. He had served as head priest of St. Bernadette's Parish during the time of the disappearance. In early 1997, he quietly resigned and relocated to a small mission outside Oregon. He had never spoken publicly about the case. When contacted in May 2016, he agreed to a single interview. What he revealed shifted the focus of the entire investigation. Father Delaney admitted he had known about the disappearance before it was reported. According to him, the 5 sisters had uncovered documents hidden in church archives, correspondence and ledger entries suggesting that the convent's land had once been purchased under questionable circumstances. Some of the original funding came from private donors with undisclosed connections to a now-defunct religious order, one the church had long since disbanded for philosophical divergence. Delaney didn't provide details, but he confirmed the sisters felt trapped between their spiritual duty and the weight of what they had learned. They believed silence was a form of protection, he said, for the church, for the town, for the people they served. He admitted helping them prepare the chapel for their withdrawal. He admitted locking the doors from the inside. He admitted writing part of the note found in the box. When asked where they had gone, he answered simply, "I never saw them again." Back to the sketches, meanwhile, Sister Elsie's artwork continued to evolve. One new sketch depicted a narrow forest trail leading from the chapel's east gate. At the end of the trail, a clearing. Trees grew in a perfect ring around a sunken patch of earth, where a single rotted post still stood. At its base, investigators found something buried under layers of leaves and soil. A rusted lantern bracket, and 5 small brass plates. Each plate bore a name. The ground beneath them was undisturbed. No graves, no remains. Just symbols. A ritual space, possibly. A marker. But for what? Forensics found nothing conclusive. The surrounding soil showed no evidence of recent movement. No trace of fire or disturbance. But the location matched Sister Elsie's drawing exactly. And then came something even more surprising. Later that week, while cataloging artifacts from the crawlspace, archivists discovered a rolled leather pouch hidden beneath a floorboard near the chapel organ. Inside, several folded pages, water-stained but legible. The handwriting matched that of Sister Catherine. The entry spanned just under 3 weeks in early October 1996. We've been told to keep quiet, to stay obedient. But what is obedience when truth weighs this heavily? The letters we found weren't meant for us. We weren't supposed to see them. Now that we have, we're unsure what to do. Bernice wants to tell the bishop. Margaret says the bishop already knows. Anna says silence is the only way forward. No mention of escape. No talk of harm. Just conflict. A decision unfolding slowly. We've agreed. If we're not believed, we'll take our voices out of the equation. Not out of fear, but conviction. The final page read, "We choose to become still." When Sheriff Holloway formally requested access to diocesan archives related to St. Bernadette's, her request was denied. No additional comment was provided. Privately, an anonymous source close to the diocese admitted that while nothing illegal was discovered by the sisters, some information was considered sensitive to the church's historical record and reputation. To this day, no official explanation has been offered. The sisters were never declared missing, never declared deceased, never officially reassigned. In the eyes of the church, they were simply removed. The journal found beneath the chapel floor had reopened questions the church hoped were long closed. 5 pages of handwritten conflict, ending in quiet resignation. No mention of violence, no clear escape plan. Just a shared decision among 5 women to become invisible. But for Sheriff Janine Holloway, there was still one missing piece. Why? One location had been overlooked during previous searches. The convent's old utility cellar. Local maps showed it as a basic storage area, sealed in 2003 after a minor electrical fire. But new floor scans conducted by the renovation team revealed something unusual. A false wall near the base of the stairs. On May 19th, Holloway and a forensic team returned to the site. Behind the wall, they found a small filing alcove. Its contents were minimal. A broken chair, a melted candle, and a locked metal drawer cabinet. Inside that drawer were 5 sealed envelopes, each marked with a sister's name, each containing handwritten letters, addressed to whom it may concern. The contents were brief. Sister Margaret wrote of disillusionment. Sister Bernice wrote of guilt. Sister Noelle mentioned something found in the ledgers. Sister Catherine warned of records that had no right to exist. Sister Anna's note was the longest and the calmest. We were told not to speak. We were told to pretend the numbers didn't add up. But when a vow demands silence over conscience, what remains of its sanctity? She ended the letter with a single line. We are not lost. We are waiting. With permission from a local judge, Holloway's team obtained access to old financial archives from the parish. Among the documents were 1996 donation logs from private benefactors, several of which had been redacted in the official church summaries. Buried in one ledger was a series of monthly consulting stipends sent from an anonymous out-of-state account, routed through a now-defunct religious law firm. The payments stopped the same month the nuns disappeared. One final entry was noted on October 12th, 2 days before the vanishing. The payment was significantly larger and marked with a single word: final. A week later, forensic archivist Sarah Tolbert discovered something else in the basement. An old wooden scroll case tucked behind a collapsed cabinet. Inside were 3 heavily weathered pages, written in Latin and later translated by a university scholar. The text appeared to be part of a correspondence between a former bishop and the founder of a fringe religious sect, dating back to the early 1900s. The documents discussed acquired land meant for quiet service and voluntary seclusion of sensitive matters within unregistered spiritual communities. The land referred to matched the coordinates of St. Bernadette's. In short, the convent may have been founded as a kind of holding place, a place not just for prayer, but for people, stories and secrets the church wanted quietly contained. On June 1st, nearly 20 years after the sisters disappeared, Sister Elsie finally spoke. The moment came unexpectedly. No reporters, no cameras, just a quiet morning in her care facility where she asked a nurse for paper and pen. She wrote 3 words: "They are safe." And then, later that day, speaking softly for the first time in decades, they asked me to stay, to be the witness. If the truth ever needed to surface, the diocese, contacted again with the new findings, declined further comment. An internal letter leaked weeks later simply stated that the St. Bernadette convent operated during a complicated period of restructuring, and that no wrongdoing was confirmed during internal reviews. No disciplinary actions were taken. No investigation was reopened by the church. For them, the matter was closed. But the town of Durbin saw things differently. In September 2016, a memorial was quietly placed near the East Trail behind the chapel ruins. 5 brass plaques, 5 rosaries encased in glass. No dates of death, no in memory of, only names. And below them the phrase, "Still in silence, still here." That same week, a woman in her 60s visited the site. She gave no name. She didn't speak to reporters, but she left behind a note folded beneath one of the plaques. "We stayed because we had to. We left because we chose to. You don't need to find us. You only need to understand why." CTV footage later confirmed her identity. She was Sister Noelle. To this day, no charges have ever been filed. No definitive account has been made public. But inside Durbin, the disappearance of the 5 nuns from St. Bernadette's is no longer treated as a mystery, but a message. They weren't taken. They weren't lost. They stepped away from a system that demanded silence and chose their own version of it. Not because they were defeated, but because they believed some truths should not be buried, only kept quiet, until someone was finally willing to listen.
Welcome to Horror Out.